Now let's see what has given in chapter 15th. First, we are going to see Naradiya Kirtan Paddhati. Second, Mr. Cholkar sugarless tea. And third, about two lizards. The readers may remember that mention was made in the 6th chapter regarding the Ramnavami festival in Shirdi, how the festival originated and how in the early years there was a great difficulty in getting a good Haridas for doing kirtan on those occasions, and how Baba permanently entrusted this function to Das Ganu and how he has been doing it successfully ever since. Now in this chapter we shall describe the manner in which Das Ganu has been doing the kirtan. So first point, Naradiya Kirtan Paddhati. Generally, our Haridas, while doing the kirtan, wear a gala and full dress. They put on a headdress, either a feta or a turban, a long flowing coat with a shirt inside, and uparni, that is short dhotar, on the shoulder, and the usual long dhotar from the waist below. After dressing himself in this fashion for some kirtan in the Shirdi village, Das Ganu once went to Baba for prostrating before him. Baba asked him, "Well, bridegroom, where are you going dressed so beautifully like this?" "For doing the kirtan," came the reply. Then Baba said, "Why do you want all this paraphernalia, coat, uparni, and feta, etc.? Lay off all that before me. Why wear them on the body?" Das Ganu immediately took them off and placed them at Baba's feet. Thenceforth, Das Ganu never wore these things while doing the kirtan. He was always bare from waist upwards. A pair of chiplis was in his hand and a garland round his neck. This is not in consonance with the practice generally followed by all the Haridas, but this is the best and the purest method. The sage Narada, from whom the Kirtan Paddhati originated, wore nothing on his torso and head. He carried a veena in his hand and wandered from place to place singing the glory of the Lord. And now let's move towards the second point, that is Mr. Cholkar sugarless tea. Initially, Baba was known in Pune and Ahmednagar districts, but Nana Sahib Chandorkar, by his words of mouth, and Das Ganu, by his splendid kirtan, spread the fame of Baba in the Konkan, that is Mumbai Presidency. In fact, it was Das Ganu, may God bless him, who by his beautiful and inimitable kirtans made Baba available to so many people there. The audience who come to hear the kirtans have different tastes. Some like the erudition or learning of the Haridas, some his gesture, some his singing, some his wit and humor, some his preliminary dissertation on Vedanta, and some in his main theme, and so on. But among them there are very few who by hearing the kirtan get faith and devotion or love for God or saints. The effect of hearing Das Ganu's kirtan on the minds of audience was, however, electric as it is were. We have an instance here. Das Ganu was once doing his kirtan and singing the glory of Sai Baba in the Kaupanishwar temple in Thana. One Mr. Cholkar, a poor man serving as a temporary employee in the civil courts in Thana, was amongst the audience. He heard Das Ganu's kirtan most attentively and was much moved. He there and then mentally bowed and vowed to Baba, saying, "Baba, I am a poor man, unable to support my family. If by your grace I pass the departmental examination and get a permanent post, I shall go to Shirdi, fall at your feet, and distribute sugar candy in your name." As luck would have it, Mr. Cholkar did pass the examination and did get the permanent post, and now it remained for him to fulfill his vow. The sooner the better. Mr. Cholkar was a poor man with a large family to support, and he would not afford to pay for the expenses of a Shirdi trip. As is well said, one can easily cross over Nane Ghat in Thana district or even the Sayadri range, but it is very difficult for a poor man to cross Ambar Ghat, that is the threshold of his house. As Mr. Cholkar was anxious to fulfill his vow as early as possible, he resolved to cut down his expenses and save money. He determined not to use sugar in his diet and began to take his tea without it. After he was able to save some money in this way, he came to Shirdi, took Baba's darshan, fell at his feet, offered a coconut, distributed it with a clean conscience along with sugar candy as per his vow, and said to Baba that he was much pleased with his darshan and that his desires were fulfilled that day. Mr. Solkar was in masjid with his host Bapu Sahib Jog. When the host and the guest both got up and were about to leave the masjid, Baba spoke to Jog as follows. Give him cup of tea fully saturated with sugar. Hearing these significant words, Mr. Solkar was much moved. He was wonderstruck. His eyes were bedewed with tears and he fell at Baba's feet again. Mr. Jog was also curious about this direction. Baba wanted by his words to create faith and devotion in Solkar's mind. He hinted as it were that he got the sugar candy as per his vow and that he knew fully well his secret determination not to use sugar in his diet. Baba meant to say, if you spread your palms with devotion before me, I am immediately with you day and night. Though I am here physically, still I know what you do beyond the seven seas. Go wherever you wish over the wide world, I am with you. My abode is in your heart and I am within you. Always worship me, who is seated in your heart as well as in the hearts of all beings. Blessed and fortunate indeed is he who knows me thus. What a beautiful and important lesson Baba had thus imparted to Mr. Solkar. And now let's move towards the next point, that is the last point of this chapter, two lizards. Now we close this chapter with a story of two little lizards. Once Baba was sitting in the masjid. A devotee sat in front of him when a lizard tick-ticked. Out of curiosity, the devotee asked Baba whether this tick-ticking of the lizard signified anything good or was it a bad omen. Baba said that the lizard was overjoyed as her sister from Aurangabad was coming to see her. The devotee sat silent, not making out the meaning of Baba's words. Immediately, a gentleman from Aurangabad came on horseback to see Baba. He wanted to proceed further, but his horse would not go as it was hungry and wanted grams. He took out a bag of grams from his shoulders to bring grams and dashed it on the ground to remove dirt. A lizard came out from there and in the presence of all climbed up the wall. Baba asked the questioner devotee to mark her well. As at once, when shouting to her sister, both sisters met each other after a long, kissed and embraced each other, whirled round and danced with love. Where is Shirdi and where is Aurangabad for the lizard? How should the man on horseback come there from Aurangabad with the lizard? And how should Baba make the prophecy of the meeting of the two sisters? All this is really very wonderful and proves the omniscience, the all-knowing nature of Baba. He who respectfully read this chapter or studied it daily will get all his miseries removed by the grace of Sadguru Sai Baba. And by this way we have ended with this chapter. Both to Sri Sai and peace to be all. Hope you enjoyed the last chapter. Now let's move towards chapter number 16 and 17. In this English publication, chapter number 16 and 17 are merged together, which is about quick Brahmadhyan. These two chapters relate to the story of a rich gentleman who wanted Brahmadhyan quickly from Sai Baba. So let's see. Preliminary. The last chapter described how Mr. Solkar's vow of small offerings was completed and accepted. In that story, Sai Baba showed that he would accept with appreciation any small thing offered with love and devotion, but if the same thing was offered with pride and haughtiness, he would reject it. Being himself full of Satchitta Ananda, that is pure consciousness, knowledge and bliss, he did not care much for mere outward formalities, but if an offering was made in a humble spirit, the same was welcome and he accepted it with pleasure and avidity. In fact, there is no person more generous and benevolent than a Sadguru like Sai Baba. He cannot be compared to Chintamani jewel, the Kalpataru, that is the celestial tree which fulfills our desires, or the Kamadhenu, that is the celestial cow which yields what we desire. They give us only what we desire, but the Sadguru give us the most precious things, that is inconceivable and inscrutable the reality. Now let us hear how Sai Baba disposed of a rich man who came to him and implored him to give him Brahmadnyan. There was a rich gentleman. Unfortunately, his name and whereabouts are not mentioned in this chapter. There was a rich gentleman who was very precious in his life. He had amassed a large quantity of wealth, houses, and lands, and had many servants and dependents. When Baba's fame reached his ears, he said to a friend of his that he was not in want of anything, and so he would go to Shirdi and ask Baba to give him Brahmadnyan, which if he got would certainly make him more happy. His friend dissuaded him, saying, "It is not easy to know Brahma, and especially so for an avaricious man like you, who is always engrossed in wealth, wife, and children. Who will in your quest of Brahmatnyan satisfy you, who does not give away even a paisa in charity?" Not minding his friend's advice, the fellow engaged a return journey Tanga and came to Shirdi. He went to Masjid, saw Sai Baba, fell at his feet and said, "Baba, hearing that you show Brahma to all who come to you, I too have come here all the way from my distant place. I am much fatigued by the journey, and if I get Brahmadnyan from you, my troubles will be well paid and rewarded." Baba then replied, "Oh my dear friend, do not be anxious. I shall show you Brahma. Many people come to me and ask for wealth, health, power, honor, position, cure of disease, and other temporal matters. Rare is the person who comes to me and asks for Brahmatnyan. There is no dearth of people asking for worldly things, but people interested in spiritual matters are very rare. I think it is a fortunate and auspicious movement when person like you come and ask me for Brahmadnyan. So forthwith I show to you with pleasure Brahma with all its accompaniments and complexities." Saying this, Baba started to show him Brahma. He made him sit there and engaged him in some other talk, and thus made him forget his question for the time being. Then he called a boy and told him to go to one Nandu Marwadi and get from him a loan of ₹5. The boy left and returned immediately, saying that Nandu was absent and his house was locked. Then Baba asked him to go to Bala Grocer and get from him the said loan. This time also the boy was unsuccessful. This experiment was repeated again twice or thrice when the same result. Sai Baba was, as we know, the living and moving Brahma incarnate. Then someone asks, why did he want the paltry sum of ₹5? And why did he try hard to get it? In reality, he did not want his sum at all. He must have known fully that Nandu and Bala were absent, and he seemed to have adopted this procedure as a test for the seeker of Brahma. That gentleman had a roll or a bundle of currency notes in his pocket, and if he was really earnest, he would not have sat quiet and be a merry onlooker when Baba was frantically trying to get a paltry sum of ₹5. He knew that Baba would keep his words and repay the debt, and that the sum wanted was insignificant. Still, he could not make up his mind and advance the sum. Such a man wanted from Baba the greatest thing in the world, that is the Brahmadnyan. Any other man who really loved Baba would have given to him ₹5 at once, instead of being a merry onlooker. It was otherwise with this man. He advanced no money, nor did he sit silent, but began to be impatient, as he was in a haste to return, and implored Baba, saying, "Oh Baba, please give me Brahmadnyan soon." Baba replied, "Oh my dear friend, did you not understand all the procedure that I went through? Sitting in this place for enabling you to see Brahma. It is in short this: for seeing Brahma one has to give 5 things: that is surrender 5 things. First, 5 pranas, that is vital forces. Second, 5 senses. Third, mind. Fourth, intellect. And fifth, ego. This path of Brahmajnan or self-realization is as hard as treading on the edge of a razor. Sai Baba then gave a rather long discourse on the subject, the purport of which is given below. Qualifications of Brahmajnan or self-realization. All persons do not see or realize the Brahma in their lifetime. Certain qualifications are absolutely necessary. And there are total 10 qualifications mentioned over here. So let's see the first one. That is mumuksha. Mumukshu or intense desire to get free. He who thinks that he is bound and that he should get free from bondage and work earnestly and resolutely to that end and does not care for any other thing is qualified for the spiritual life. Second, that is virakti. Virakti or a feeling of non-attachment with the things of this world and the next. Unless a man feel disgusted with the things, emoluments and honors which his action would bring in this world and the next, he has no right to enter into the spiritual realm. Third, antarmukha. Antarmukha, that is introversion. Our senses have been created by God with a tendency to move outward, and so man always look outward and not inward. He who wants self-realization and immortal life must turn his gaze inward and look to his inner self. Fourth one is catharsis, that is eliminating all base ideas and emotions. Unless a man has turned away from wickedness and stopped from doing wrong and has entirely composed himself, and unless his mind is at rest, he cannot gain self-realization even by means of knowledge. Fifth one is, that is right conduct. Unless a man leads a life of truth, penance and insight, a life of celibacy, he cannot get God realization. Sixth one is preferring shreyas, that is the good, to preyas, that is the pleasant. There are two sorts of things, that is the good and the pleasant. The former deals with spiritual affairs and the latter with mundane matters. Both these are open to man for acceptance. He has to think and choose one of them. The wise man prefers the good to the pleasant, but the unwise through greed and attachment chooses the pleasant. Seventh one is control of the mind and the senses. The body is the chariot and the self is its master. Intellect is the charioteer and the mind is the reins. The senses are the horses and the sense objects are their paths. He who has not understanding and whose mind is unrestrained has his senses unmanageable, like the stray horses of a charioteer does not reach his destination, that is get self-realization, but goes through the round of births and deaths. But he who has understanding, the whose mind is restrained, has his senses under control, like the good obedient horse of a charioteer reaches the destination, that is the state of self-realization, whence he is not born again. The man who has understanding as his charioteer, that is guide, and is able to rein his mind, reaches the end of the journey, which is supreme abode of all pervading, that is Vishnu, the Lord. Eighth point is purification of mind. Unless a man discharges satisfactorily and disinterestedly the duties of his station in life, his mind will not be purified, and unless his mind is purified, he cannot get self-realization. It is only in the purified man that vivek, that is disattachment to the unreal, crop up and lead on to self-realization. Unless egoism is dropped, avarice got rid of, and the mind made desireless, that is pure, self-realization is not possible. The idea that I am the body is a great delusion, and the attachment to this idea is the cause of bondage. Leave off this idea and attachment, therefore, if you want to reach the goal of self-realization. Ninth point, that is the necessity of a guru. The knowledge of the self is so subtle and mystic that No one can by his own individual effort ever hope to attain it. So, the help of another person, teacher who has himself got self realization is absolutely necessary. What others cannot give with a great efforts and pains can be easily gained with the help of such a teacher, for he has walked on the path himself and can easily take the disciple step by step on the ladder of spiritual progress. 10th one is about, that is the lastly point, grace of the Lord is most essential thing. When the Lord is pleased with anybody, he gives him vivek and vairagya and takes him safe beyond the ocean of mundane existence. The self cannot be gained by the study of Vedas, nor by intellect, nor by learning. He whom the self chooses gains it. To him, the self reveals its nature, says the Katha Upanishads. After the dissertation was over, Baba turned to the gentleman and said, "Well, sir, there is in your pocket the Brahma in form of 50 times of 5, that is 250 rupees. Please take that out." The gentleman took out from his pocket the bundle of currency notes and to his great surprise found on counting them that there were 25 notes of 10 rupees each. Seeing this omniscience of Baba, he was moved and fell at Baba's feet and craved for his blessings. Then Baba said to him, "Roll up your bundle of Brahma, that is, currency notes. Unless you completely get rid of your avarice or a greed, you will not get the real Brahma. How can he whose mind is engrossed in wealth, progeny, and prosperity expect to know the Brahma without removing his attachment for them? The illusion of attachment or the love for money is a deep eddy, that is, whirlpool of pain, full of crocodiles in the form of conceit and jealousy. He who desires less can alone cross this whirlpool. Greed and Brahma are asunder as poles, they are eternally opposed to each other. Where there is greed, there is no room for thoughts or meditation of the Brahma. Then how can a greedy man get dispassion and salvation? For a greedy man, there is no peace, neither contentment nor steadiness. If there be even a little trace of greed in mind, all the sadhanas, that is, spiritual endeavors, are of no avail. Even the knowledge of a well-read man who is not free from the desire of the fruit or reward of this action is futile and can't help him in getting self-realization. The teachings of a guru are of no use to a man who is full of egoism and who always thinks about the sense objects. Purification of mind is absolutely necessary. Without it all, our spiritual endeavors are nothing but useless show and pomp. It is therefore better for one to take only what he can digest and assimilate. My treasury is full and I can give anyone what he wants, but I have to see whether he is qualified to receive my gift. If you listen to me carefully, you will be certainly benefited. While sitting in this masjid, I never speak any untruth. When a guest is invited to a house, all the members of the household and other friends and relations that happen to be present are entertained along with this guest. So all those they were present in the masjid at that time could partake of the spiritual feast that was served by Baba for the rich gentleman. After getting Baba's blessings, one and all, including the gentleman, left the place quite happy and contented. Now let's see the last point of this chapter, that is special characteristics of Baba. There are many saints who living their houses stay in forest, caves or hermitages and in solitude in order to get liberation or salvation for themselves. They do not care for other people and are always self-absorbed. Sai Baba was not of such type. He had no home, no wife, no progeny, nor any relations near or distant. Still he lived in the world, that is society. He begged his bread from 4 or 5 houses, always lived at the foot of the neem tree, carried on worldly dealings and taught all the people how to act and behave living in this world. Rare are the sadhus and sants who, after attaining God vision, strive for the welfare of the people. Sai Baba was the foremost, and therefore says Hemad Panth, blessed is the country, blessed is the family, and blessed are the chaste parents, where this extraordinary, transcendent, and precious pure jewel Sai Baba was born. And by this way, we are done with this chapter. Both to Sri Sai and peace to be all. Now, let's see the next chapter. Here also, chapter number 18 and chapter number 19 are merged together. First, how Hemad Panth was accepted and blessed. Second, stories of Mr. Sathe and Mrs. Deshmukh. Third, encouraging good thoughts to fruition. Fourth, variety in Upadesh. Fifth, teaching regarding slander and remuneration for labor. In the last two chapters, Hemad Panth described how a rich gentleman aspiring for quick Brahmajnan was treated by Baba, and now in these two chapters he describes how Hemad Panth himself was accepted and blessed by Baba, how Baba encouraged good thoughts and fructified them, and his teachings regarding self-improvement, slander and remuneration for labor. So, preliminary. It is a well-known fact that the Sadguru looks first to the qualification of his disciples and then gives them suitable instructions without unsettling their minds in the least, and leads them on towards the goal of self-realization. In this respect, some say that what the Sadguru teaches or instructs should not be divulged to others. They think that their instructions become useless if they are published. This view is not correct. The Sadguru is like a monsoon cloud. He pours down profusely, that is, scatter widely his nectar-like teachings. This we should enjoy and assimilate to our heart's content, and then serve others with them without any reservation. This rule should apply not only to what he teaches in our waking state, but to the vision he gives us in our dreams. To quote an instance, Buddha Kaushik Rishi published his celebrated Ram Raksha Stotra, which he had seen in his dream. Like a loving mother forcing bitter but beneficial medicines down the throats of her children for the sake of their health, Sai Baba imparted spiritual instructions to his devotees. His method was not veiled or secret but quite open. The devotees who followed his instructions got their object. Sadgurus like Sai Baba open our intellect and show us the divine beauty of the self and fulfill our tender longing of devotion. When this is done, our desire or sense objects vanishes. Twin fruits of Vivek, that is discrimination, and Vairagya, that is dispassion or non-attachment, come to our hands, and knowledge sprouts up even in the sleep. All this we get when we come in contact with sense, that is Sadguru, serve them and secure their love. The Lord who fulfills the desires of his devotee comes to our aid, removes our trouble and sufferings, and makes us happy. This progress or development is entirely due to the help of the Sadguru, who is regarded as the Lord himself. Therefore, we should always be after the Sadguru, hear his stories, fall at his feet and serve him. Now we come to our main story, that is Mr. Sathe. There was a gentleman named Mr. Sathe who had attained some publicity many years ago during Crawford regime, which was put down by Lord Ray, the governor of Mumbai. He suffered severe losses in trade. Other adverse circumstances gave him much trouble and made him sad and dejected. Being restless, he thought of leaving home and going out to a distant place. Man does not generally think of God, but when difficulties and calamities overtake him, he turns to him and prays for relief. If his demerits have come to an end, God arranges his meeting with a son, who gives him proper directions regarding his welfare. Mr. Sathe had similar experience. His friend advised him to go to Shirdi, where so many people were flocking to get Sai Baba's darshan for getting peace of mind and the satisfaction of their wants. He liked the idea and at once came to Shirdi in 1917. Seeing Baba's form, which was like eternal Brahma, self-luminous, peerless and pure, his mind lost its restlessness and became calm and composed. He thought that it was the accumulation of merits in his former births that brought him to the holy feet of Baba. He was a man of strong will. He at once started to make a parayan, that is, study of Guru Charitra. When the reading was finished in the Saptaha 7 days, Baba gave him a vision that night. It was to his effect. Now listen the dream. Baba, with Guru Charitra in his hand, was explaining its content to Mr. Sate, who was sitting in front and listening carefully. When he woke up, he remembered the dream and felt very happy. He thought that it was extremely kind of Baba who awakens souls like his that are snoring in ignorance and make them taste the nectar of Guru Charitra. Next day, he informed Kaka Sahib Dikshit of the vision and requested him to consult Sai Baba regarding its meaning or significance. Whether one saptaha, that is weeks, reading was sufficient or whether he should begin again. Kaka Sahib Dikshit, when got a suitable opportunity, asked Baba, Deva, what did you suggest to Mr. Sate by this vision? Whether he should stop or continue saptaha? He is a simple devotee, his desire should be fulfilled. Then Baba replied, he should make one more saptaha of the book. If the work be studied carefully, the devotee will become pure and will be benefited. The Lord will be pleased and will rescue him from the bondage of the mundane existence. At this time, Hemad Pant was present there. He was shampooing Baba's legs. When he heard Baba's words, he thought in his mind, what? Mr. Sate read for a week only and got a reward, and I am reading it for 40 years with no results. His 7 days stay here becomes fruitful, while my 7 years stay, that is from 1910 to 1917, goes for nothing. Like a chatak bird, I am ever waiting for the merciful cloud to pour its nectar on me and bless me with his instructions. No sooner did this thought cross his mind, Baba knew it then and there. It was the experience of bhaktas that Baba understood all their thoughts and that he suppressed the evil thoughts and encouraged the good ones. Reading Hemad Pant's mind, Baba at once asked him to get up, go to Shama, that is Madhavrao Deshpande, get from him rupees 15 as dakshina, sit and chit-chat with him for a while and then return. Mercy dawned in Baba's mind, and so he issued this order. And who could disobey Baba's order? Hemad Pant immediately left the masjid and came to Shama's house. He had just bathed and was wearing a dhotar. He came out and asked Hemad Pant, how is it that you are here now? It seems that you have come from the masjid. Why do you look restless and dejected? Why are you alone? Please sit and rest while I shall do my worship and return. In the meanwhile, you please take a pan bida, that is leaves and betel nuts, etc. Let us then have a pleasant chat. After saying this, he went inside and Hemad Pant sat alone in the veranda. He saw in the window a well-known Marathi book named Nath Bhagwat. This is a commentary by the Saint Eknath on the 11th skanda, that is chapter, of the bigger Sanskrit work, the Bhagavad. At the suggestion or recommendation of Sai Baba, Misters Bapu Sahib Jog and Kaka Sahib Dikshit read Bhagavad Gita daily, with its Marathi commentary named Bhavaratha Dipika or Jnaneshwari, that is a dialogue between Krishna and his friend devotee Arjun, and Nath Bhagwat, that is a dialogue between Krishna and his servant devotee Uddhav, and also Eknath's other big work, that is Bhavaratha Ramayana. When devotees came to Baba and asked him certain questions, he sometimes answered them in part and asked them to go and listen to the readings of the above mentioned works, which are the main treatise of Bhagavad Dharma. When the devotees went and listened, they got full and satisfactory replies to their questions. Hemad Pant also used to read daily some portions of Nath Bhagwat. That day, he did not complete the daily portion of his reading but had left it unfinished in order to accompany certain devotees who were going to the masjid. When he took up the book from Shama's window and casually opened it, he found to his surprise that the unfinished portion opened up. He thought that Baba sent him very kindly to Shama's house for enabling him to complete his daily reading. So he went through the unfinished portion and completed it. As soon as this was over, Shama, after doing his worship, came out and the following conversation took place between them. Now let's see the conversation. Hemadpant: I have come with a message from Baba. He has asked me to return with rupees 15 as dakshina from you. Also to sit with you for a while and have pleasant chit-chat and then return to the masjid with you. Shama, with surprise: I have no money to give. Take my 15 namaskar, that is prostrations, in lieu of rupees as dakshina to Baba. Hemadpant: all right, your namaskar are accepted. Now let us have some chit-chat. Tell me some stories of Leela of Baba which will destroy our sins. म्हणजेच पाप. Shama: then sit here for a while. Wonderful is the sport, that is Leela of the god, that is Baba. You know it already. I am a village rustic while you are an enlightened citizen. You have seen some more Leelas since you are coming over here. How should I describe them before you? Well, take these leaves, betel nut and chuna and have the pan bida, while I go in, dress myself and come out. In few minutes, Shama came out and sat talking with Hemadpant. He said, the Leela of this god, that is Baba, is inscrutable. There is no end to his Leela. Who can see them? He plays or sports with his Leelas. Still he is beyond, that is unaffected by them. Why do we rustic knows? Why does not Baba himself tell stories? Why do he send learned men like you to fools like me? These ways are inconceivable. I can only say that they are not human. With his preface, Shama added, I now remember a story which I shall relate to you. I know it personally. As a devotee is resolute and determined, so is Baba's immediate response. Sometimes Baba puts the devotees to severe test and then gives them upadesh, that is instructions. As soon as Hemadpant heard the word upadesh, a flash of lightning crossed through his mind. He at once remembered the story of Mr. Sathe Guru Charitra reading and thought that Baba might have sent him to Shama in order to give peace to his restless mind. However, he curbed this feeling and began to listen to Shama's story. They all showed how kind and affectionate Baba was to his devotees. Hemadpant began to feel joy on hearing all this. Then Shama began to tell the following story. That is of Mrs. Radhabai Deshmukh. There was an old woman by the name Radhabai. She was the mother of one Kakasaheb Deshmukh. Hearing Baba's fame, she came to Shirdi with the people of Sangamner. She took Baba's darshan and was much satisfied. She loved Baba intimately and resolved in her mind that she should accept Baba as her guru and take some upadesh from him. She determined to fast herself unto death, so long as Baba did not accept her and give her any upadesh or mantra. She stayed in her lodging and stopped taking any food or water for 3 days. I was frightened by this ordeal of the old woman and interceded with Baba on her behalf. I said, Deva, what is this you have started? You drag so many persons here. You know that old lady, she is very obstinate and depends on you. She has resolved to fast on to death. If you don't accept and instruct her, if anything worse happens, people will blame you and say that Baba did not instruct her and as a consequence she met her death. So take some mercy on her, bless her and instruct her. On seeing her determination, Baba sent for her and made her change her mind by addressing as follows. O mother, why do you have to subject yourself to unnecessary tortures? You are my mother and I am your child. Take pity on me and hear me through. I tell you my own story, which if you listen carefully will do you good. I had a guru. He was a great saint and most merciful. I served him long, very long. Still he would not blow any mantra into my ears. I had keen desire never to leave him, but to stay with and serve him. and at all cost receive some instructions from him. But he had his own way. He first got my head shaved and asked me for 2 paise as dakshina. I gave the same at once. You may say that as my guru was perfect, why should he ask for money and how should he be called desireless? The reply is that he never cared for coins, what he had to do with them. These 2 paises were, that is, first, fame, faith, and second, patience or perseverance. I gave these 2 paise to him and he was pleased. I resorted to my guru for 12 years. He brought me up. There was no dearth of food and clothing. He was full of love, or say he was love incarnate. How can I describe it? He loved me most. Rare is a guru like him. When I looked at him, he seemed as if he was in deep meditation, and then we both were filled with bliss. Night and day I gazed at him with no thought of hunger and thirst. Without him I felt restless. I had no other subject to meditate upon nor any other thing than my guru to attain. He was my sole refuge. My mind was always fixed on him. This nishtha, that is firm faith, is 1 paisa of dakshina. Saburi, that is patience or perseverance, is the other paisa. I waited patiently and served my guru. This saburi will ferry you across the sea of this mundane existence. Saburi remove all sins and afflictions, get rid of calamities in various ways, and cast aside all fear and ultimately gives you success. Saburi is the mine of virtues, concert of good thought. Nishtha, that is faith, and Saburi, that is patience, are like twin sisters, loving each other very intimately. My guru never expected any other thing from me. He never neglected me but protected me at all times. I lived with him and was sometimes away from him, still I never felt the absence of his love. He always protected me by his glance, just as the tortoise feeds her young ones, whether they are near her or away from her on the other side of the bank, by her loving glance. O mother, my guru never taught me any mantra, then how shall I blow any mantra in your ears? Just remember that Guru's tortoise like loving glance gives us happiness. Do not try to get mantra or upadesh from anybody. Make me the sole object of your thoughts and actions, and you will no doubt attain Paramartha, that is the spiritual goal of life. Look at me wholeheartedly, and I, in turn, look at you. Sitting in this masjid, I speak the truth, nothing but the truth. No sadhana or proficiency in the 6 shastras is necessary. Have faith and confidence in your Guru. Believe that Guru is the sole actor or doer. Blessed is he who knows the greatness of his Guru and thinks him to be Hari, Hara, and Brahma, that is Trimurti incarnate. Instructed in this way, the old lady was convinced. She bowed to Baba and gave up her fast. Hearing this story carefully and attentively and marking its significance and appropriateness, Hemad Pant was most agreeably surprised. On seeing this wonderful Leela of Baba, he was moved from top to toe. He was overflowing with joy. His throat was choked and he was not able to utter a single word. Shama, on seeing him in this condition, asked him, "What is the matter with you? Why are you so silent?" How shall I describe the innumerable Leelas of Baba? Just at this time, the bell in the masjid began to ring, proclaiming that the noon worship and Aarti ceremony had begun. Therefore, Shama and Hemad Pant hurried to the masjid. Bapu Sahib Jog had just started the worship. Women were up in the masjid and men were standing below in the open courtyard, and they were all singing the Aarti in chorus to the accompaniment of drums. Shama went up, pulling Hemad Pant with him. He sat to the right and Hemad Pant in front of Baba. On seeing them, Baba asked Hemad Pant to give the dakshina brought from Shama. He replied that Shama gave namaskar in lieu of rupees and that he was there in person. Baba said, "All right, now let me know whether you both had a chit-chat, and if so, tell me all that you talked about." Not minding the sound of the bell, the drum, and the chorus songs, Hemad Pant was eager to tell Baba what they had talked about and started to narrate it. Baba was also anxious to hear, and so he left the bluster and leaned forward. Hemadpan said all that they talked about was very pleasant, especially the story of the old lady was most wonderful, and that on hearing it he thought that his Leela was inexplicable, and under the guise of that story he really blessed him. Baba then said, "Wonderful is the story. How were you blessed? I would like to know everything in detail from you, so tell me all about it." Then Hemadpant related in full the story which he had heard a little while before and which had made a lasting impression on his mind. Hearing this, Baba was much pleased and asked him, "Did story strike you and did you catch its significance?" He replied, "Yes, Baba, the restlessness of my mind have vanished and I have got true peace and rest and come to know the true path." Then Baba spoke as follows. "My method is quite unique. Remember well this one story and it will be very useful. To get the knowledge, that is realization of self, dhyana, that is meditation, is necessary. If you practice it continuously, the vrittis, that is subtle thoughts, will be pacified. Being quite desireless, you should meditate on God who is in all the creatures, and when the mind is concentrated, the goal will be achieved. Meditate always on my formless nature, which is knowledge incarnate, consciousness, and bliss. If you cannot do this, meditate on my form from top to toe, as you see here night and day. As you go on doing this, your vrittis will be single pointed, and the distinction between the dhyata, that is mediator, dhyana, that is act of meditation, dheya, that is thing meditated upon, will be lost, and the meditator will be one with the consciousness and be merged in the Brahma. The mother tortoise is one bank of the river and her young ones are on the other. She gives neither milk nor warmth to them. Her merry loving glance gives them nutrition. The young ones do nothing but remember, that is, meditate upon their mother. The tortoise glance is to young ones the only source of sustenance and happiness. Similar is the relation between the Guru and disciples. When Baba uttered these words, the chorus of the Aarti songs was over and all cried out loudly in unison, "Victory be to our Sadguru Sai Maharaj, who is pure consciousness, knowledge and bliss." Dear readers, let us imagine that we are at this time standing amongst the crowd in the masjid, and let us join them in the Jai Jaikar. After the Aarti ceremony was over, Prasad was distributed. Bapu Sahib Jog came forward as usual, and after saluting Baba, gave into his palm a handful of sugar candy. Baba pushed all this into the hands of Hemad Pant and said to him, "If you take this story to heart and remember it well, your state will be sweet as the sugar candy. All your desires will be fulfilled and you will be happy." Hemad Pant bowed down to Baba and implored, "Do favor me like this, bless and protect me always." Baba replied, "Hear this story, meditate on it and assimilate its spirit. Then you will always remember and meditate on the Lord who will manifest himself to you." Dear readers, Hemad Pant got prasad of sugar candy, and we now get the prasad of sugar candy or nectar of this story. Let us drink it to our heart content, meditate on it and assimilate it, and be strong and happy by Baba's grace. Amen. Towards the end of this 18th chapter, Hemad Pant had dealt with some other matters which are given below. Hope you enjoyed the story of an old woman. Now let's proceed further with Baba's advice regarding our behavior. The following words of Baba are of general welfare and invaluable. If they are kept in mind and acted upon, they will always do you good. Unless there is some relationship or connection, nobody goes anywhere. If any men or creatures come to you, do not discourteously drive them away but receive them well and treat them with due respect. Sri Hari, that is God, will be certainly pleased if you give water to the thirsty, bread to the hungry, clothes to the naked, and your veranda to strangers for resting. If anybody wants any money from you and you are not inclined to give, do not give, but do not bark at him like a dog. Let anybody speak hundreds of things against you. Do not resent by giving a bitter reply. If you tolerate such things, you will certainly be happy. Let the world go topsy turvy, you remain where you are. Standing in your own place, look on calmly at the show of all things passing before you. Demolish the wall of difference that separates you from me, and then the road for our meeting will be clear and open. The sense of differentiation as I and thou is the barrier that keeps away the disciples from his master, and unless that is destroyed, the state of union is not possible. Allah Malik, that is God, is the sole proprietor. Nobody else is our protector. His method of work is extraordinary, invaluable, and inscrutable. His will be done, and He will show us the way and satisfy our heart's desire. It is on account of Rinanubandha, that is former relationship, that we have come together. Let us love and serve each other and be happy. He who attains the supreme goal of life is immortal and happy. All others merely exist. That is, live so long as they breathe. Wow, we have learned so much important message from this Baba's advice. Now let's move towards the next point, that is encouraging good thoughts to fruition. It is interesting to note how Sai Baba encouraged good thoughts. You have to surrender yourself completely to Him with love and devotion, and then you will see how He helps you throughout. Some saints has said that when you get a good thought immediately after awakening from sleep, and if you develop the same afterwards during the day, your intellect will be unfolded and your mind will be attain calmness. Hemadpant wanted to try this. One Wednesday night before going to bed, he thought, tomorrow is Thursday, an auspicious day, and the place, that is Shirdi, is so holy. So let me pass the whole day in remembering and celebrating Ram Nam. And then he slept off. Next morning when he got up, he remembered without any effort the name of Ram and was much pleased. After finishing his morning duties, he went to see Sai Baba with flowers. When he left Dikshitwada and was passing by Butiwada, that is present Samadhi Mandir, he heard a beautiful song that was being sung nicely by one Aurangabadkar in the masjid before Baba. The song was Guru Kripanjan Payo Mere Bhai, etc. by Eknath, in which he says that he got collyrium in the form of his Guru Grace, which opened his vision and made him see Ram in and out, in sleep, dream, and waking state, and everywhere. There were so many songs, but why was this song particularly chosen by Aurangabadkar, a devotee of Baba? Is this not a curious coincidence arranged by Baba to amplify the determination of Hemadpant to sing unceasingly Ram Nam during the day? All saints agree and lay stress upon the efficacy of uttering Rams, that is God's name, in fulfilling the ambitions of the Bhaktas and in protecting and saving them from all calamities. Next point is about variety in Upadesh, that is slanderer condemned. Sai Baba required no special place nor any special time for giving instructions. Whenever any occasion demanded, he gave them freely. Once it so happened that a Bhakta of Baba reviled someone behind his back before other people. On leaving aside merits, he dwells on the faults of his brother and spoke so sarcastically that the hearers were disgusted. Generally, we see that people have a tendency to scandalize others unnecessarily, and this brings on ill feelings. Saints see scandal in other light. They say that there are various ways of cleansing or removing dirt, that is, by means of water and soap, etc. But the scandal monger has got a way of his own. He removes the dirt, that is, faults of others by his tongue, so in a way he obliges the person whom he reviles, and for this he is to be thanked. Sai Baba had his own method of correcting the scandal monger. He knew by his omniscience what the slanderer had done, and when he met him at noon near the Lendi, Baba pointed out him a pig that was eating flith near the fence, and said to him, "Behold, how with what relish it is gulping flith. Your conduct is similar. You go on reviling your own brethren to your heart's content. After performing many deeds of merit, you are born as a human, and if you act like this, how can Shirdi help you in any way?" Needless to say that the Bhakta took the lesson to his heart and went away. In this way, Baba went on giving instructions whenever necessary. If these are born in our minds and acted upon, the spiritual goal, that is realization, is not far off. There is a proverb which says, "If there be my Hari, Lord, he will feed me on my cot." This proverb is only true in respect of food and clothing. But if anyone believing this sits idle and does nothing in spiritual matters, he will be ruined. One has to extend himself to his utmost for attaining self-realization. The more he endeavors, the better for him. Baba said that he was omnipresent, transcending land, air world, light and heaven, and that he was not localized. To remove the misunderstanding of those who thought that Baba was only his body, 3 cubits and a half length, he incarnated himself in this form, and if any devotee meditated on him day and night with complete self-surrender, he experienced complete union with him like sweetness and sugar, waves and sea, eye and its sight. He who wants to get rid of the cycle of births and deaths should lead a righteous life with his mind calm and composed. He should not speak harshly to anyone, so as to hurt him. He should always engage himself in good actions, should do his duties and surrender himself heart and soul to him. He need not then to be afraid of anything. He who trusts him entirely, hears and expounds his Leela and does not think of anything else is sure to attain self-realization. Baba asked many to remember his name and to surrender to him, but to those who wanted to know who they were, that is, who am I? He advised Shravan, that is study, Manan, that is contemplation. To some, he advised remembering God's name, to others hearing his Leelas, to some worship of his feet, to others reading and studying Adhyatma Ramayan, Naneshwari and other sacred scriptures. Some he made sit near his feet, some he sent to Khandoba's temple, and some he advised the repetition of the 1,000 names of Vishnu, and some the study of Chandogya Upanishad and Gita. There was neither any limit nor any restrictions to his instructions. He gave in person or by vision and dreams. To someone addicted to drink, he appeared in his dream, sat on his chest, pressed it, and left him after he gave a promise not to touch liquor anymore. To some, he explained some mantras like Gurura Brahma in dreams. To some devotee who was practicing Hatha Yoga, he sent word that he should leave off Hatha Yoga practices, sit quiet and wait, that is Saburi. It is impossible to describe all his ways and methods. In ordinary worldly dealings, he set examples by his action, one of which is given below. That is remuneration for labor. One day at noon, Baba came near Radha Krishnamai's house and said, "Bring me a ladder." Some men brought it and set it against the wall of a house as directed by Baba. He climbed up on the roof of Vaman Gonkar's house, passed over the roof of Radha Krishnamai's house, and then got down from the other corner. What object Baba had, none could know. Radha Krishnamai was at that time shivering with malaria. It may be to drive off that fever that he may have gone up there. Immediately after getting down, Baba paid 2 rupees to the person who brought that ladder. Somebody asked Baba why he paid so much for this. He replied that nobody should take the labor of others in vain. The worker should be paid his dues promptly and liberally. If the principle taught by Baba be followed, that is, if remuneration for labor be paid promptly and satisfactorily, the laborers will turn out better, and both the laborers and their employers will be profited. And by this way, we have ended with this chapter. Bow to Sri Sai and peace to be all. And now, let's say chapter 20. Das Ganu's problem solved by Kaka's maid servant. In this chapter, Hemadpant describes how Das Ganu's problems was solved by Kaka Sahib Dikshit's maid servant. Preliminary. God was originally formless. He assumed a form for the sake of bhaktas. With the help of Maya, he played the part of an actor in the big drama of the universe. Let us remember and visualize Sri Sai. Let us go to Shirdi and see carefully the program after the noon Aarti. After the Aarti ceremony was over, Sai used to come out of the masjid and standing on its edge, distribute udi to the devotees with very kind and gracious and loving looks. The bhaktas also got up with their equal fairwear, clasped his feet and had the bliss of udi. Baba passed handfuls of udi into the palms of the devotees and marked their foreheads with udi with his own hands. The love he bore for them in his heart was boundless. Then he addressed the bhaktas, "O Bhau, go home to take your lunch. You Anna, go to your lodgings. You Bapu, enjoy your meal." In this way, he accosted each and every devotee and sent them home. Even now you can have the pleasure of these sights if you bring into play your imagination. Now, bringing Sai in our mental vision, let us meditate on him for his feet upwards to his face, prostrating before him humbly, lovingly and reverentially. Now let's see what Isha Upanishad says. Das Ganu once started to write a Marathi commentary on the Isha Upanishads. Let us first give a brief idea of the Upanishad before proceeding further. It is called Mantropanishad as it is embodied in the mantras of the Vedic Sanhita. It constitutes the last or the 48th chapter of Vajrasaneyi Sanhita, that is Yajurveda, and it is therefore called Vajrasaneyi Sanhitopanishad. Being embodied in Vedic Sanhitas, this is regarded as superior to all other Upanishads which are in Brahmanyakas and Aranyakas, that is, explanatory treatises on mantras and rituals. Not only this, other Upanishads are considered to be commentaries on the truth mentioned briefly in the Isha Upanishad. For instance, the biggest of the Upanishads, that is Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, is considered by Pandit Satavalekar to be a running commentary of the Isha Upanishad. Professor R.D. Ranade says, the Isha Upanishad is quite a small Upanishad and yet it contains many facts which shows an extraordinarily piercing insight. Within the short compass of 18 verses, it gives a valuable mystical description of the Atma, a description of the ideal sage who stands unruffled in the midst of temptation and sorrows, and adumbration of the doctrine or Karma Yoga as later formulated. The most valuable idea that lies at the root of the Upanishad is that of a logical synthesis between the two opposites of knowledge and work, which are both required according to the Upanishad to be annulled in a higher synthesis. In another place, he says that the poetry of the Isha Upanishad is a commixture of moral, mystical, and metaphysical knowledge. From the brief description given above about the Upanishad, one can see how difficult it is to translate the Upanishad in a vernacular language and bring out its exact meaning. Das Ganu translated it in Marathi, that is OV, verse by verse, but as he did not comprehend the gist or essence of the Upanishad, he was not satisfied with his performance. On being dissatisfied, he consulted some learned men regarding his doubts and difficulties and discussed it with them at a great length. They did not solve them, nor they did give him any rational or satisfactory explanation. So Das Ganu was a little restless over this matter. And now let's see the second point, that is Sadguru only competent and qualified to explain. As we have seen this Upanishad in the quintessence of the Vedas, it is the science of self-realization. It is the siddhi or weapon which can rend asunder the bondage of life and death and make us free. Therefore, he thought that He who has himself attained self-realization can only give him the true or correct interpretation of the Upanishad. When nobody could satisfy Das Ganu, he resolved to consult Sai Baba about this. When he got an opportunity to go to Shirdi, he saw Sai Baba, prostrated himself before him and mentioned his difficulties about Isha Upanishad and requested him to give the correct solution. Sai Baba blessed him and said, "You need not to be anxious. There is no difficulty about the matter. The maid servant of Kaka, that is Kaka Sahib Dikshit, will solve your doubts at Ville Parle on your way home." The people who were present there and heard this thought that Baba was joking and said, "How could an illiterate maid servant solve difficulties of this mystic nature?" But Das Ganu thought otherwise. He was sure that whatever Baba spoke must come true, as Baba's words were the decree of Brahma, that is Almighty. Now let's see the story, that is Kaka's maid servant. Fully believing Baba's words, he left Shirdi and came to Ville Parle, a suburb of Mumbai, and stayed with Kaka Sahib Dikshit. The next day, when Das Ganu was enjoying his morning nap, he heard a poor girl singing a beautiful song in clear and melodious tone. The theme of the song was a crimson colored sari. How nice it was, how fine was the embroidery, how beautiful were its border, etc. He liked the song so much that he came out and saw that it was being sung by a young girl, the sister of Namia, who was a servant of Kaka Sahib. The girl was cleaning vessels and had only a torn rug on her person. On seeing her impoverished condition and her happy temperament, Das Ganu felt pity for her, and when Rao Bahadur M.V. Pradhan gave him a pair of dhotars the next day, he requested him to give a sari to the poor little girl also. Rao Bahadur bought a good chirdi, that is small sari, and presented it to her. Like a starved person getting delicious dishes to eat, her joy knew no bound. Next day she wore the new sari and out of great joy and merriment whirled and danced around and played fugadi with other girls. The following day she kept the new sari in her box at home and came in the old and torn rugs, but she looked as merry as she was the previous day. On seeing this, Das Ganu's pity transformed into admiration. He thought that the girl, being poor, had to wear a torn rug, but now she had a new sari which she kept in reserve and putting on the old rug, strutted herself, showing no trace of sorrow or dejection. Thus he realized that all our feelings of pain and pleasure depend upon the attitude of our mind. On thinking deeply over this incident, he realized that a man ought to enjoy whatever God has bestowed on him in the firm conviction that he beset everything from all sides, and that whatever is bestowed on him by God must be for his good. In this particular case, the impoverished condition of the poor girl, her torn rug, and the new sari, the donor, the done and the deal were all parts of the Lord and provided by him. Here, Das Ganu got a practical demonstration of the lesson of the Upanishad, the lesson of contentment with one's own lot, with the belief that whatever happens is ordained by God and is ultimately good for us. And now let's see the last second point of this chapter, that is unique method of teaching. From the above incident, the reader will see that Baba's method was unique and varied. Though Baba never left Shirdi, he sent some to Machindragarh, some to Kolhapur or Solapur for practicing sadhanas. To some he appeared in his usual form, to some he appeared in waking or dream states day or night and satisfied their desires. It is impossible to describe all methods that Baba used in imparting instructions to his bhaktas. In this particular case, he sent Das Ganu to Ville Parle, where he got his problem solved through the maid servant. To those who say that it was not necessary to send away Das Ganu and that Baba could have personally taught him, we saw that Baba followed the right or best course, or how else could Das Ganu learn a great lesson that the poor maid servant and her sari were provided by the Lord. Now we close the chapter with another beautiful extract about this Upanishad. The ethics of the Isha. One of the main features of the Isha Upanishad is the ethical advice it offers, and it is interesting to note that the ethics of the Upanishad are definitely based upon the metaphysical position given in it. The very opening words of the Upanishad tell us that God God prevents everything. As a corollary from this metaphysical position, the ethical advice is offered is that a man ought to enjoy whatever God bestows on him in the firm belief that, as he prevents everything, whatever is bestowed on him by God must be good. It follows naturally that the Upanishad forbids us from coveting another man's property. In fact, we are fittingly taught here a lesson of contentment with one's own lot in the belief that whatever happens is divinely ordained and hence it is good for us. Another moral advice is that man must spend his lifetime always in doing action, specifically the karmas enjoined in the Shastras. With resignation to his will, inactivity according to this Upanishad would be canker of the soul. It is only when a man spends his lifetime in doing actions in this manner that he can hope to attain the ideal of Naishya Karma. Finally, the text goes on to say that a man who sees all being in the self and sees the self as existing in all beings, in fact, for whom all beings and everything that exists have become the self, how can such a man suffer infatuation? What ground would such a man have for grief? Slothfulness, infatuation, and grief verily proceed from our not being able to see the Atma in all beings. But a man who realizes the oneness of all beings and things, for whom everything has become the self, must ipso facto cease to be affected by the common foibles of humanity. And by this way, we are done with this 28th chapter. Both to Sri Sai and peace to be all. Now let's see chapter number 21. In this chapter, the stories are mentioned of first V.H. Thakur, second Anantarao Patankar, and third Pandharpur Pleader. In this chapter, Hemadpant relates the story of Vinayak Harishchandra Thakur, B.A. Anantarao Patankar of Pune, and a pleader from Pandharpur. All these stories are very interesting, which, if very carefully read and grasped, will lead the readers on the spiritual path. Preliminary. It is a general rule that it is our good luck in the form of accumulation of merits of past births that enables us to seek the company of saints and benefits thereby. As an illustration of this rule, Hemadpant gives his own instance. He was a resident magistrate of Bandra, a suburb of Mumbai, for many years. A famous Mohammedan saint named Pir Maulana was living there, and many Hindus, Parsis, and many others who followed different religion used to go him and take his darshan. His Muzawar, that is priest, by name Yunus, pressed Hemadpant many times for going to see him, but for one reason or the other he was not able to see him. After many years, his turn came and he was called to Shirdi, where he was permanently enrolled in Sai Baba's Darbar. Unfortunate fellow do not get such contact of the sense. It is only the fortunate ones that get it. Let's see institution of sons. There have been institution of sons in this world from time immemorial. Various saints appear, that is, incarnate themselves in various places to carry out the mission allotted to them, but though they work in different places, they are, as it is, were one. They work in unison under the common authority of the Almighty Lord and know fully well what each of them is doing in his place and supplement his work where necessary. An instance illustrating this is given below. So let's see the first story, that is of Mr. Thakur. Mr. V.H. Thakur, B.A., was a clerk in the revenue department, and he once came to a town named Vadgaon near Belgaon, South Mysore country, along with a survey party. There he saw a Kannarij saint, Appa, and bowed before him. The saint was explaining a portion from the book Vichar Sagar of Nischal Das, that is, a standard work on a Vedanta, to the audience. When Thakur was taking his leave to go, he said to him, "You should study this book, and if you do so, your desires will be fulfilled, and when you go to the north in the discharge of your duties in future, you will come across a great saint by your fortune. and then he will show you the future path and give rest to your mind and make you happy. Then he was transferred to Junnar, where he had to go by crossing Nane Ghat. This ghat was very steep and difficult, and no other conveyance other than a buffalo was of use in crossing it. So he had to take a buffalo ride through the ghat, which was much inconvenient to him. Thence he was transferred on promotion to Kalyan, and there he got acquainted with Nana Sahib Chandorkar. He heard much about Sai Baba from him and wished to see him. Next day, Nana Sahib had to go to Shirdi and he asked Thakur to accompany him. He could not do so as he had to attend the Thana civil court for a civil case, so Nana Sahib went alone. Thakur went to Thana, but there the case was postponed. Then he repented for not accompanying Nana Sahib. Still he left for Shirdi, and when he reached there he found that Nana Sahib had left the place the previous day. Some of his other friends whom he met there took him to Baba. He saw Baba, fell at his feet and was overjoyed. His eyes were full of tears and his hair stood on end. Then after a while the omniscient Baba said to him, "The path of this place is not easy as the teachings of Kannari Saint Appa, or even as the buffalo ride in the Nane Ghat. In this spiritual path you have to put in your best exertion. It is very difficult." When Thakur heard these significant words, with only he knew, he was overwhelmed with joy. He came to know that the word of Kannari saint had turned true. Then, joining both hands and placing his head on Baba's feet, he prayed that he should be accepted and blessed. Then Baba said, "What Appa told you was all right, but these things have to be practiced and lived. Merry reading won't do. You have to think and carry out what you read, otherwise it is of no use. Merry book learning without the grace of the Guru and self-realization is of no avail." The theoretical portions was read from the work Vichar Sagar by Thakur, but the practical way was shown to him at Shirdi. Another story given below will bring out this thirst more forcibly. So now let's see the story of Anantrao Patankar. One gentleman from Pune by the name Anantrao Patankar wished to see Sai Baba. He came to Shirdi and took Baba's darshan. His eyes were satisfied and he was much pleased. He fell at Baba's feet and after performing proper worship said to Baba, "I have read a lot, studied Vedas, Vedantas and Upanishads and heard all the Puranas, but still I have not got any peace of mind, so I think all my readings was useless. Simple ignorant devout persons are better than myself. Useless the mind becomes calm, book learning is of no avail. I have heard from many people that you easily give peace of mind to so many people by your merry glance and potent words, so I have come here. Please take a pity on me and bless me." Then Baba told him a parable which was as follows. Parable of 9 balls of stool, that is Navavidha Bhakti. Once a merchant came here. Before him a mare passed her stool, that is 9 balls of stool. The merchant, intent on his quest, spread the end of his dhotar and gathered all the 9 balls in it, and thus he got concentration, that is peace of mind. Mr. Patankar could not make out the meaning of this story, so he asked Ganesh Damodar alias म्हणजेच उर्फ दादा केळकर, "What does Baba mean by this?" He replied, "I too do not know all that Baba says and means, but at his inspiration I say what I come to know. The mare is God's grace and the 9 balls excreted are the 9 forms or types of bhakti, that is Shravan, that is hearing. Second, Kirtan, that is praying. Third, Smaran, that is remembering. Fourth, Padasevan, that is resorting to the feet. Fifth, Archan, that is worship. Sixth, Namaskar, that is bowing. Seventh, Dasya, that is service. Eighth, Sakhyam, that is friendship. Ninth, Atmanivedan, that is surrender to the self. These are the 9 types of bhakti. If any of this is faithfully followed, Lord Hari will be pleased and manifest himself in the home of the devotee. All the sadhanas, that is japa, vocal worship, Tapa, that is penance, yoga practice, and studying the scriptures and expounding them are quite useless unless they are accompanied by bhakti, that is devotion. Knowledge of the Vedas or fame as a great dhani and merry formal bhajan, that is worship, are of no avail. What is wanted is full devotion. Consider yourself as the merchant or seeker after the truth, and be anxious and eager like him to collect or cultivate the 9 types of devotion. Then you will attain stability and peace of mind. Next day, when Patankar went to Baba for salutation, he was asked whether he collected the 9 balls of stool. Then he said that he, being a poor fellow, should first be graced by Baba and he would be able to collect them. Then Baba blessed and comforted him, saying that he would attain peace and welfare. After hearing this, Patankar became overjoyed and happy. And now, last story of this chapter is the Pandharpur Pleader. We shall close this chapter with a short story showing Baba's omniscience and his using it for correcting people and setting them on the right path. Once a pleader from Pandharpur came to Shirdi, went to masjid, saw Sai Baba, fell at his feet and without being asked offered some dakshina and sat in a corner eager to hear the talk that was going on. Then Baba turned his feet towards him and said, "How cunning the people are! They fall at the feet, offer dakshina but abuse behind me. Is it not amazing?" This cap fitted the pleader and he had to wear it. None understood the remark. The pleader grasped it but kept silent. When they returned to the Wada, the pleader said to Kaka Sahib Dikshit, "What Baba remarked was perfectly right. The remark was aimed at me. It was a hint to me that I should not indulge in reviling or scandalizing others, that is calling names." When the sub-judge or munsif of Pandharpur, that is Mr. Nolkar, came and stayed here for the improvement of his health, a discussion about this matter was going on in the bar room at Pandharpur. It was said or discussed there whether the ailments from which the subject suffered were ever likely to be got rid of without medicines by merely going after Sai Baba, and whether it was proper for an educated man like the subject to take recourse to such methods. The subject was taken to task, that is, he was criticized, as also Sai Baba. I also took part in this affair, and now Sai Baba showed the impropriety of my conduct. This is not a rebuke to me but a favor, a lesson that I should not indulge in any scandal or slander of others and not interfere unnecessarily in others' affairs. Shirdi is about 50 kos from Pandharpur. Still Baba, by his omniscience, knew what transpired there in the bar room. The intervening places, that is rivers, jungles and mountains, were no bar to his all-perceiving sight, and he could see or read the hearts of all, and there was nothing secret or veiled from him. Everything far or near was open and clear to him, as broad as daylight. Let a man be far or near, he cannot avoid all-pervading gaze of Sai Baba. From this incident, the pleader took the lesson that he should never speak ill of others and unnecessarily criticize. Thus, his evil tendency was completely got rid of and he was set on the right path. Though the story refers to a pleader, still it is applicable to all. All should therefore take this lesson to heart and benefit thereby. Sai Baba's greatness is unfathomable, so are his wonderful leelas. His life is also such. For me is Parabrahma, that is Almighty God incarnate. And by this way we have done with this chapter. Both to Sri Sai, peace to be all.